dealer's choice.
Hello, you beautiful people, and welcome to another Whiskey Review with me, the Whiskey Novice. This is review number 137, and we're into the throes of another series of Dealer's Choice. Dealer's Choice, a series where my patrons take the wheel and suggest whiskies that they would like me to review. This time it was the turn of my good friend down there in Newton Ards, Graham Horner. Graham, part of the Northern Ireland Highland Battalion, and there are those who don't know what I'm talking about there. He asked me to review the Roe Co 13 cask strength. So, luckily for me, this was a bottle that I actually had in my collection already, so it was one that saved me having to go out and buy. It is 13 years old. Now, let's tell you what we'll do. This is opening up. I've just poured this, so I'm going to give it a minute to open up. And we'll talk about Roe Co for a moment, shall we? What is, or who are Roe Co? Well, Roe Co are Diageo in Ireland. In 2014, Diageo sold Bushmills. This was their last foothold, or their last toehold in Ireland at the time, was Bushmills, and they traded it off to Casa Cuervo, the tequila people. And in 2014, Irish whiskey was floundering, I think it's safe to say. But then it started, soon after that, it started to flourish a bit again. And I feel maybe I'm wrong in this. Maybe just this is me putting two and two together and getting five. But it looked to me, and certainly looks to me, like Diageo needed to get back into the Irish whiskey business. So what they did was, let's face it, they already own Guinness. So they opened a distillery, started a distillery in 2019 down in the Liberties in Dublin, down in an old power station, which was the old Guinness power station. So it was their property. Now, that was 2019. This is a 13-year-old whiskey. So how does that work, you ask, especially if you're new to whiskey? Independent bottlers isn't a term you oft hear here in Ireland, but they do exist. They just call themselves something else, in my opinion. Really, a lot of these new distillers, while they're building, while they're setting up, getting their distilleries ready, they're sourcing whiskey. They're aging it in their own way, maturing it in their own way, labelling it with their own label, and selling it as that distillery. So, independent bottlers in Scotland, as we know them, they're sourcing whiskey. Technically, they're maturing it in their own way, they're labelling it in their own way, and they're selling it. So it's the same thing, really, in my opinion. This is different, though. This is slightly different, because what Roe Co 13-year-old cask strength is old Bushmill stock. So as much as it's sourced whiskey, it's not really. It's their own stuff. It was just old stock. It was basically casks that they carried over from Bushmills, which were already maturing. This actually here is full port cask maturation. So you're getting something a little different. You're getting Bushmills a little different. It is sold under the Roe Co brand, and at some point they will run out of this old stock and start to produce. You'll start to be buying Roe Co's own juice. But for now, I think it's actually not a bad example of trying to get your hands on some Bushmills, but done differently. So there's a bit of history, and another thing, before we go any further. Would you hear this? Are you ready? Especially if you're new to whiskey here, that's a cork that went off. That has outlived its stay. That went off on me, and I started to feel it getting weaker and weaker in the neck of the bottle. So this will happen. If you're new to whiskey, it is just a little tip. This will happen. Don't wrap tape around it. Don't persist and think that it'll be all right. Get yourself an old cork. I keep corks. You'll see whiskey drinkers, enthusiasts will keep old corks, and they keep old corks for that purpose. Just stick a new cork in that bottle, because you're doing it more harm than good by using the cork just because that's the cork that came with it and that's what it looks like. The only reason I kept that was for this, pretty much for this review. Once this review's done, that there is for the bin, because there's no use to anything else, because the cork itself is pretty much dozed. It's gone. It's dead. Right. This should have settled by now. So let's get into it, shall we? It is, as I said, a full port maturation, port cask maturation. Bottle of 58%. Naturally, I think it's all natural, although it doesn't say on it, but I do believe it's just non-chill filtered, no colour added. Maybe a little colour, but sweet. Winey, as I would sort of expect a bit of wininess with that port cask maturation. I have a few port cask whiskies about me, and they all do tend to have that winey note of them, that winey tang. And as I said, it's not surprising, port being a fortified wine. That 58% does not offend the nostrils. It really doesn't. It's not, all it's doing is bringing flavour and great notes. It's certainly not all about the alcohol here. It's floral. If there is fruit, it's all red berries, cranberry, and even a hint of strawberry. Yeah, fresh, clean. It's actually a very promising nose in this. Sharp, bittersweet arrival. There's that 58% now. Oh yes. Ooh. Yeah, that's hefty. And it always, whiskies like this always surprise me. They always amaze me. That you can't smell that 58% isn't blasting you, but yet as soon as you sip it, it's there. Then it's strong. But I mean, it's strong, but it doesn't lift the head off you either. Still, coats really well. Still floral. Still all about that red fruit. Hints of pipe tobacco, or it's maybe cigar smoke. I whenever I'm not around a smoker, or cigar smoke or pipe smoke for a long, I think it's pipe smoke I'm getting here. Yeah. Also, golden syrup in the palate. That wininess carries through. Yeah, that is pipe smoke. Definitely. And it's quite prominent. Very nice. Very nice, very clean, as I said. Finish. Quite long. A little herbal. That pipe smoke hangs around. I was going to say a chilly heat, but I think it's actually... more of a cinnamon heat. Like a candy. Well, there's a sweet candy that we don't have here. Red Hots. But I've had Red Hots. And that's what it reminds me of. Look, very good. Very good. One of the reasons why I don't review a lot of Irish whiskey at the minute is because of the sourced thing. Because a lot of it's sourced. I don't really want to go down that path of reviewing what I would consider somebody else's whiskey. And this is somebody else's whiskey. It's not Roe Co, but it is the Agio. And I know what it is. I'm sure what it is. It's a bit like Teeling. Whenever Teeling started up, it was all Cooley Spirit, but Cooley was owned by Teeling, technically, or run by Teeling. So it was still their whiskey, really, that they were transferring over. So it does happen in those cases. And this, as I said, is a prime example. And I don't really mind this one the same because I know that it's Bushmills. I'm sure of what it is. Now, I've added a touch of water. I nearly went straight down the neck with that there. Showing myself there. It takes water to settle in this. You know, I just added that water to it. It goes a little soapy, a little vinegary. Even hints of plastic. Weird, that's just the addition of water that did that to it. But I know from whenever I did my tasting notes that if you let this settle, it just becomes sweeter, more confectionery. Palate doesn't really lose anything for the addition of water. Actually, the good thing about that addition of water is it pulls that cinnamon heat back from the finish, allowing you to enjoy the palate more. Yeah, this is very more. That pipe tobacco is really something that stands out to me. It's something I like. This doesn't act like a lot of the port. It noses like a port matured whiskey, but the palate doesn't really. That wininess is there, but it's not as prominent as it was in the nose. It's thick. It is syrupy. It gets sweeter. The finish becomes sweeter. I enjoyed this. This is about £50. 58%. It's natural, to my knowledge. Yes, it's sourced, technically. But in this case, I don't care because I just like it. I do think this is a good whiskey. And if you can get your hands on it, it's 13 years old. I would recommend it. That's not bad. £50 for a 13-year-old cask strength whiskey, is it? In anybody's book. So, it gets a Whiskey Novice recommendation. So let's leave it at that and move on, shall we? Boy, that was a lot of chatter, wasn't it? A lot of chatter about stuff at the start of this, but it was nice to have a bit of a background on this. And I do. I'm not a big fan of the bottle, I suppose, if I want to be picky about it, but it's nice whiskey. It is. So what would I recommend? Well, I don't have one to bring up for you because the whiskey that I'm recommending here, I did, and I do, as I said, have other port, cask, matured, influenced, finished whiskies in my collection, maybe 3-4 of them, and I tried a couple of them against this, and there was no comparison. They didn't, and when I say there was no comparison, it wasn't that they were better or worse, they just didn't really compare. So what I'm actually going to offer up to you is this. This is a bit of a unicorn whiskey, in fairness. I always feel a bit guilty whenever I'm offering up whiskies that you probably can't get your hands on, especially outside of Northern Ireland, outside of Belfast, because this is the friend at hand Girona Gold. And what's it now? Well, what it is, it's 13-year-old Bushmills again. I was talking earlier on about independent ballers. This comes from the friend at hand whiskey shop in Belfast, owned by Willie Jack. And Willie, technically, on paper, is an independent baller because this is his bottling of Bushmills. There are a few ones. He has a cask strength one. This one, the Girona Gold, 12 and a half years, matured in ex-bourbon, 6 months in, I think it's Oloroso. I actually meant to phone Willie and ask him and forgot, but I think it's Oloroso casks. It's certainly ex-sherry. And it's just, the reason why I'm offering this up to you is Bushmills stand for a bit of stick sometimes, and generally it's coming from me, but this bottle, this Jonah Gold, and you can see the little it gets its name from the a ship from the Spanish Armada, which was sunk off the coast of Dublin back during the Spanish Armada, which dates have eluded me. And so there's a little bag, as you can see around the neck of it there, and it's fake gold, but you just get your little bag of gold and all that comes with it. So it's Bushmills done differently. And I mean, you didn't have to look too far. Bushmills done differently has been about a while. In the Pogue Castle were doing it. Writer's Tears, I suppose, were doing it at the start. But I just think it's nice because Lord knows Bushmills are struggling a bit to do it differently. I mean, the Causeway collection and all's there, but you're into ridiculous prices then and ridiculously hard to get. So if you want Bushmills done differently, it's out there. This is why I'm offering this bottle to you. I've had it before. I don't actually have a bottle. I've had it a few times, and it's nice stuff. It is nice stuff. So that is what I'm offering to you. If Roe Co 13 cask strength is your thing, you want to try something a bit different, you're going to have to get yourself to Belfast, because they don't sell this stuff online. They only sell it in the whiskey shop. And I would recommend to you the friend at hand Jonah Gold. There you go. There you go. This has been, I know, I appreciate you staying with me for this one, because this was a long one. This was long for me. This was a long episode for me because there was a lot to talk about. But I enjoyed it, and I hope you did. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very, very much to my patrons. Were it not for the patrons, this episode probably wouldn't have happened, because Graham Horner, as I said earlier in the episode, picked this whiskey for me to review. So thank you, Graham. Thank you to my patrons. If you wish to join that group, the details are in the video description below. Till the next time, my friends, I'm going to sign off and say, here's to your good health. Cheers. Hey, thanks for watching my video. Please click and subscribe to be notified of further content.